There's a new deal breaker in San Diego real estate purchases. In California, 13% of agents said they have run into this problem in 2024, and that is their buyers not being able to find homeowners insurance when making a purchase. And we've had that happen with our sellers right here in San Diego where they were not able to finish the transaction. But ultimately, homes are still selling. People are still buying homes. But if you are doing either of those, it's important to know what to expect and to prepare for all of these situations so that when you are going through that process, it's not a surprise. You're well in tune with what's going on. And in this video, we're gonna break that down, what that means for buyers and what that means for sellers. So as always, I'm Chris Erickson. We got a real estate crew right here in San Diego. If you are thinking about making a move and you are ready to start that conversation, all of our contact info is right below. Feel free to reach out. Not feel free, we want you guys to reach out and start that conversation so that we can help you through the entire process from square one all the way through closing and beyond. So without further ado, let's jump into it. With some of the bigger companies, State Farm, Allstate, actually my insurance is still with State Farm. I used to refer all of our clients to my guy who was actually named Jake, not Jake from the commercials, but his name was Jake. It was awesome. Could just send him there. It was an easy process. We didn't have to think much about it. Go get your homeowner's insurance. We're good to go. Let's go through the transaction. Unfortunately, State Farm's not issuing anymore. So now we are referring a few different insurance brokers who can look at a few different companies and give you different ideas of what to expect when going through the process. But as a buyer, it is super important to get on this right away, even potentially before you do get into contract on a home, because that way you have time to figure out, first off, can you get homeowners insurance? Most likely you can. It just comes down to how much is that homeowners insurance policy going to be, and does that still fit within your budget? But you could potentially even start before, have that conversation with insurance agents. So one example of this, we had a seller last year who was selling their home in San Marcos, and it was in a high fire zone, and the buyers came in, they were looking at the property, loved it, let's get through this. One of the things they did run into was homeowners insurance, because when they ultimately got a quote, they had to go through a few people. They had to end up going through a broker because their original company could not and was not going to issue a new policy. They got the estimate and it was way higher than they expected. Now, the original homeowners insurance was like $2,500 or $3,000 per year when our sellers were living there. The new policy was going to be about $8,000 a year. So it's a significant jump. Now, it did end up fitting within their budget. But part of the reason too, it was two things actually. It was one, it was in a high fire zone, but two, which we hadn't run into this situation before, the home had recently had an insurance claim on it. So since it was so recent, it did carry over and the policy was going to be a bit more expensive. So it wasn't necessarily just because it was in a high fire zone. And one that we did have that actually our seller is going to be renting out his property. He lives in a condo complex. And the complex, they got their insurance dropped about a year ago. They've had supplemental insurance for the past year. Unfortunately, we had a buyer under contract. We were about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from closing. They had to cancel because they could not get a loan on the property because the amount of insurance, the amount of the policy did not fit with their criteria. So they did have to cancel in that situation. Now they are still, the HOA is still working through that to get the proper amount of insurance on the property. In the meantime, our client, he has to move on to his next job, and he decided to rent it out for a year when that all gets shaken out. So not only is it for single family homes, we've seen it in the condo market as well. Sometimes we can work through it. In this situation, since they had to go through the HOA, it's taken a little bit longer than usual, and it didn't line up with our client's timeline. But most other situations that we've had, we haven't really run into issues. Like I said, maybe some of the insurance costs are a little bit elevated from where they were a few years ago. But right when our clients are writing offers, right when we do get into escrow, even before we'll have these conversations, but this is when it gets real. You have, however long the escrow period is, 30, 45 days, whatever it might be. Maybe it's even less if it was a competitive offer. Then we're having them get on that right away, talk to their people, talk to our brokers, and make sure they get that dialed in and know what to expect. Because one thing that is in our contracts now that wasn't before is an insurance contingency. So if let's say when you're going through contingencies, we get through all that in another video, but contingency is basically one of your outs for the property. So you have your inspections, you have your loan, you have your appraisal, you have your HOA docs if you're in HOA, and now we have insurance in there. So it is actually written into the contract. If you can't get insurance, then you can get out of that agreement as well. So that's something new and another protection for buyers out there. But having those conversations even before, call your insurance broker and be like, give them the address of the place you're potentially thinking about writing an offer on and get you a quote. I mean, it's super simple. Okay, what's it gonna be? See what the amounts are and see if that still fits within your budget. Now, hopping into the seller side, there's also a few things that you could potentially get done beforehand. You can make sure you're prepared so that when you do decide to sell your home, you're not running into these issues. Once again, once you do get a buyer and you guys are in escrow, have your agent communicate with them, with their agent, and make sure they get that done right away, right off the bat. Make sure they're not dragging their feet until, we get a little bit closer to that closing timeline, because the more clarity you have up front, the easier it's going to be for everybody. One other thing that we've seen for sellers, if you are in a high fire zone or a severely high fire zone, is a new inspection that you're going to have at your property. It's called AB 38, and it's a required disclosure if your home was built before January of 2010. And it's okay, you're gonna have all your disclosures. You're gonna have the disclosures that you're filling out. What do you know about the house? What have you done recently? Have you painted? Have you done upgrades? All that stuff. This is a separate, and it's going to be, depending on what type of fire zone you are in, depends on who's going to have to come do the inspection. But a lot of times it's CAL FIRE, or it could be a local authority as well. And the disclosure is called the Fire Hardening and Defensible Space Disclosure. And it's going to inform the buyers of potential features of the home that could put it a little bit more at risk for wildfires. And in the disclosure, they're going to go around, they're going to check out the defensible space around the property. They're going to potentially check out vents, are they metal vents? They're going to check out the roof, the siding, everything around the house to see if it would be protected from embers flying around during a potential fire. And most of the times when we're working with clients, these will come out during the escrow process, where we'll figure out we're in a high fire zone. We'll have to get the disclosure completed. They have to have somebody out, check it out. And we haven't really had any issues where there's been a ton of things wrong. If there is something wrong, the home seller will potentially have to correct that, and then they'll come back out, reassess, and check it off. Okay, now you are good to go. Now you can do this ahead of time. The report, once you get it cleared, it's good for 6 months. So if you're selling your home, you get it done now and then sell it, 2-3 months down the line. But if an inspection cannot be done before closing, the seller and the buyer can agree that the responsibility will be transferred to the buyer post-closing, and then they'll have 1 year to take care of that to make sure it is all squared away. Like I said, most times it really depends on where the homes are. Are they up on a canyon? Is it rural? What type of fire zone are they in? Which can vary widely. It could be like, if you're going down a street, we had a listing down in central San Diego. We were about 2 homes away from where the high fire zone did start. It was on the same street. So it's not necessarily, parallel street to street. It was like on the same street, about 2-3 houses away. So it can vary widely. It really depends on how these maps are drawn. But there is good news. I did just read that the County of San Diego is working on some measures to mitigate some of the costs of higher insurance. And while no date yet is set for when this program will potentially go into effect, it's called the Wildfire Prepared Home, and it will offer you a discount for your insurance policy if you do hit a few different criteria. And the program, it's going to cost $125 to get the certification, and there's 2 different levels that you can go into. The first one's Wildfire Prepared Home Base, and this is a creation of a 5-foot buffer around your home in preparation of the exterior of your home or covered patios or porches, that kind of stuff. And the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus includes all of that, plus a few other things. If you do potentially cover your gutters, if you replace your vents with metal dryer vents, then you will potentially get this as well. Like I said, this is in the works, but it is good news, give you a little bit of relief in your homeowner's insurance. And so it's definitely not all doom and gloom. Homes are still selling. We're seeing homes sell every single day. We're still seeing buyers buy homes every single day. It's just a matter of being prepared so that you know as a buyer what your insurance costs are going to be and make sure they fit within your budget. As a seller, make sure you are getting your home prepared, making sure you're doing the correct disclosures, and making sure you're all dialed in, and also just being aware of that from the other side when buyers are putting offers into your home. Make sure they're aware to get their insurance in line, all that kind of stuff, just to make it go as smoothly as possible. So as always, if you guys are thinking about making a move, you got some more questions about this, feel free to reach out. All of our contact info is right below. I'm Chris Erickson. We got a real estate crew right here in San Diego, and we got your back when making the move here in San Diego.